and Mr. Perfect had passed, and I think he had talked about how it could kind of rub people the wrong way, so soon to his passing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Anyway, to make a long story short, he kind of gave me the whole, like I said, he gave me the whole thing about setting up the ring, paying my dues, this and that. And my cousin at the time, Rocco, who's now our sound guy in SCW, he was interested in doing the same thing. So we both started driving up there early, helping set up the ring. We did that for a few shows. And then all of a sudden, we're just sitting there one day in the crowd, waiting for one of the shows to start. And we look over, and there's guys sitting there, and they're wearing hats that say, like, SCW. And SCW, what's that?
Yeah.
And it's Scott County Wrestling. It's like, Scott County? Wait, that's back home. And so I remember, I can't remember if I approached them directly there, which at the time that would probably be out of my nature as far as just up and walking up to somebody that I didn't know and just striking a conversation. But, or if I may have found it, like they had a website at the time, which by the way, it was like scw.tuya.com.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was...
Yeah, I remember
No offense, guys, but their website was absolute garbage. That was a horrible website. But,
I remember that's where we all went for like the message boards and stuff like that.
Right, that's how we communicate with everybody. But I remember reaching out to them in one facet or another, and they were like, well, put together, video packages and that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I had the video and, took it, and I dropped it off for them to watch it. And it was a guy by the name of Daryl Holsing. He performed under the name, at the time he performed under the name Scorpion, which was this just absolutely horrendous Sting knockoff. Yeah, and he had a little bit of athletic ability, but there was him. He was one of them that was running it, which, by the way, that is Stephen Youngblood's uncle, even though they're only about...
I think they're 2 years different.
2 years age difference, but it was his uncle. Still blows my mind. But hey, some people like to stay frisky later in life. But and then Nevin Knoxville, which at the time he was performing under the name Tornado. His real name's Ryan Tappendorf. Sorry guys, I'm pulling back the curtain on you. But I remember submitting the video to them, and I went over there, and Daryl sat there and watched it, and he was like, this is pretty good, this and that. And we're going to wait for Ryan to get here, and we're going to have him watch it and see what he thinks. And I remember just being an absolute nervous wreck. And Ryan sat down, and he watched it, and just sitting there not saying a whole lot. And he kind of turns around and looks at me and sticks his hand out. He goes, welcome to SCW. Yeah. And that was my tryout. And I just happened to kind of get in at a time where it's like they had been performing in a barn. That they had... It was north of Davenport, just up north of Farm and Fleet and everything. They had Stephen's parents had a farm, and they had a barn built there, a makeshift ring that they had built. And I remember coming in, and they had just stopped performing in the barn, and they were getting ready. I think they had just purchased the ring, and they were waiting for a ring to come in, and they were going to start running shows mainstream. So I just really eked my way in at the ground floor and kind of took the elevator to the top, so to speak.
Now, the first SCW show I ever went to would have been... Because on my 17th birthday, I got tickets to go see RCW over at the Rock Island Masonic Temple.
That's right, they did delve down here a little bit.
Yeah, and the first time I ever saw any SCW guys was like an exhibition match that RCW had, and it was Nevin Knoxville versus Snake Eyes Mike Andrews versus Stephen Youngblood in a triple threat. And at the time, I didn't know it then, but looking back now, I was sitting not too far away from everybody knows him as Seth Rollins and Shane Hollister, and sitting next to that group of guys, and they were making the whole show. Their group of guys was making the whole show way bigger than it actually was. Somebody would throw a punch and so I went by myself, and just seeing their interactions with anything made the show like 10 times more than what it actually was at the time. And all I remember thinking was, man, I would love to get involved with this. And it wasn't until later that year that, let's see, would have been midsummer, end of the summer, when I got invited by some friends of mine to go see SCW out in Donahue, Iowa. And the first match I ever saw, Johnny Wisdom came out as a referee. And then you came out as Masterpiece Mark Storm. And I believe that was...
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I think it was the match where Nathan Ironside had somebody come in from the crowd, and he wrestled him. Kind of challenged the fans, and a guy came out of the crowd, and Nathan Ironside tapped him out. Mm-hmm. And that was my very first anything with SCW was seeing you and Nathan Ironside, and I was like, man, this all looks like I know we're in Donahue, Iowa, in this back room of a beat down podunk bar, mm-hmm. but everything looked so like legit. It looked like well put together, and you did your job, and Nathan Ironside did his job, and Johnny did his job, and it was very. It didn't look like it had too many rough edges. I knew at 17 I didn't have all that much experience, but seeing everything for the first time the way that I was seeing it, I was like, man, this is so cool. And then it was shortly after that I was able to talk to somebody and get them to let me know when tryouts were.
Mm-hmm. I remember you being at tryouts.
That was a fun. I was so nervous. But I do remember that at the shows, you were always a consummate professional and always in character. So whenever we'd try and talk to you, you're like, "Get out of here, kid." You know, you'd sweep us off to the side. "Get out of here. Get lost." Yeah. You know. But whenever it came to anything where that veil was dropped, and we were talking to Mark Kulhavy, you were always very accommodating and almost in that big brother or teacher aspect of the younger guys or the green guys coming in. You never made us feel like less or out of place. You were always the guy that was like, you know, do you need anything? Let me know. If you need a question answered, I'll answer it, and I'll direct you where you need to go. So for that, I just wanted to say thank you. But from that, I know that, let's see, since then, the Mark Storm character has kind of has evolved. Mm-hmm. What, from those days to now, what has kind of invoked that evolution? Has it been mostly the writers, or have you had a lot of input on where your character goes?
Pretty much every step along the way that my character is taken has come from me, maybe with a little bit of feedback from the writers. You weren't around for this point, but when I first started with SCW, there's a lot of nerves involved as far as getting in front of people, performing in front of people.
For sure.
Something that was completely out of my element. My theater experiences had been... in elementary school, I played a fireman in an alphabet play. F is for fireman. And this is still an ongoing joke with my family. In high school, in my high school's production of Wizard of Oz, I played a flying monkey. That was the basics of my theater background. So I wasn't really accustomed to getting up in front of people performing, plus not having been really too involved in athletics. I mean, track is completely different animal. Yeah. I mean, as far as you're out there, you're just running against somebody. I don't think, in my opinion, there wasn't as many nerves involved. There was nerves about the outcome and whether you're going to win, but as far as being in front of the people, it didn't really register.
Yeah.
But, so when I first started, I actually started working underneath a mask as a character. He was a retired luchador commentator called El Loco Uno, and I threw out a lot of corny one-liners. Basically used a lot of comedy, and just overall just over the top character. And then slowly but surely, there was a couple shows where that character El Loco Uno was not able to make it to the shows, and replaced on commentary. He was replaced on commentary by this character known as Mark Storm. And then it would go a little bit where Mark Storm wasn't around and El Loco Uno was there. And I think you see where this is going. The fact that as I became more comfortable, I became more comfortable as the Mark Storm character without the mask and etc.
Yeah.
So then there was just some different exchanges building up, and I can't remember the exact particulars of the storyline, but basically what it came down to was I think it was our very first show in Donahue. Was originally supposed to be in Buffalo, Iowa, and 2 days before we were supposed to run that show in Buffalo, the city of Buffalo decided they didn't want us there. And so we were left scrambling for a venue. Lo and behold, when I got married and we had our wedding reception, we had my ex-wife, her uncle was Don from Don's Pub.
Yeah.
He had a great big banquet hall. And so I remember reaching out to him, asking him, well, can, and I know we're going a little bit off topic.
No, not at
all. But I said, we're looking to run a wrestling show. I said, our venue canceled on us. I said, we need a location. Do you think it's a possibility we could run out here? And he's like, yeah, we'll give it a shot and see how things go. I said, why don't we see what you want to do? Or I go, what do you want for cost? He said, why don't we see where this goes? And he goes, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So we ran our first show out there. We tried to get the internet wasn't nearly as prevalent at the time as far as getting information out to people. So that change in venue from Buffalo to all of a sudden all the way out in Donahue, it was hard to get the word out. I think we were performing in front of 30, 40 people at the time. But anyway, back to the nature at hand. It was Mr. Elite against Nevin Knoxville for the SCW Championship. And special guest referee was El Loco Uno,
okay,
who had some encounters with Mr. Elite. And I want to say at one point there was a match between El Loco Uno and Mr. Elite. And no, that was not me under the mask. We had a few different wrestlers that were similar size and height to me that performed underneath the mask to make it more convincing for that character. But anyway, partway through the match, El Loco Uno interfered on behalf of Mr. Elite, proceeded to unmask in front of Nevin Knoxville. Nevin Knoxville was an absolute shock. Oh my God, Mark Storm and El Loco Uno are one and the same. And I think the commentators at the time really tried to put that over, sell it to as much as they could to the 30 people that were there, and some of them may not have been even familiar with the history leading up to it. But yeah, that's basically where it all started. And El Loco Uno from that point forward was put to bed. He was gone, and Mark Storm became the manager of Mr. Elite, SCW Heavyweight Champion, and the leader of what would become known as the Masterpiece Conspiracy.
And so were you happy leaving the mask behind, or was your whole I don't know, the comfort, I guess, driven behind the mask? Were you like freaking out that people were going to see you from now on, or was it like, cool, I can leave that back?
Yeah, I was totally fine with moving past that, being done with the mask. It was kind of a pain in the butt. There were times, some of the venues that we ran, it was dark, hard to see. Anybody who's ever robbed a bank before knows, but no, anybody who may have dabbled around in wrestling before, worn a wrestling mask, knows that sometimes there's a little bit to work around as far as invisibility, being able to see.
Absolutely.
So there were times that there was a little bit of a disadvantage. I remember really wanting the authenticity, and I remember getting the colored hairspray and stuff. That you have the different colors. Yeah. Getting that and spray painting my facial hair that was exposed from underneath the mask black to make me look more Hispanic. Really wanted to sell the story. But I remember not having to do that anymore because the alcohol would, and the hairspray kind of dried out my face. And I remember having to scrub to get the black out the rest of my face. And it was just a pain in the butt. And everybody's like, why do you do that? I go, make it look more believable. Duh.
Right.
But, so yeah, I was totally cool with being done with what I consider the handicaps involved with wearing the mask.